MultimediaJay Radio Style. MultimediaJay Radio Style News. I'm the generic announcer. Intel has rocked the processor world once again, and this time at the low end with the launch of the Intel Pentium G4560. The Kaby Lake Pentium chip boasts 2 cores, 4 threads, a base frequency of 3.5 gigahertz, and a TDP of 54 watts. With an MSRP of only $64 and street prices in the 60s and 70s, it has very solidly taken its place among budget-oriented CPUs. We continue to monitor the details of the upcoming launch of the AMD Ryzen as they become available. Coming out of CES 2017, consumers have learned that Ryzen's socket AM4 is projected to last until 2020, when DDR5 and other future technologies have hit the streets. Numerous Ryzen models are also due to all launch at the same time, and every Ryzen CPU will be overclockable, picking up where the FX series left off in terms of enthusiast overclocking. The release date, however, is still up in the air. MultimediaJay Radio Style News time is over. Time for the weather. Connecticut has seen a return to winter these past few days, following numerous days where the temperatures reached the 50s in January. Temperatures over the next several days range from the 20s to the 40s, with chances for precipitation in the form of freezing rain on Tuesday and Wednesday. For MultimediaJay Radio Style News, I'm the generic announcer. Now it's time to say good morning to MultimediaJay.
Good morning. Hope that wasn't too different for your tastes, but in a way it's not different at all. I'm just putting the radio style into the radio style podcasts. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to MultimediaJay Radio Style for Sunday, January 15th, 2017. And what the heck are we going to talk about with what happened yesterday? With all that Pentium news and whatnot, and of course I looked at what's going on with Ryzen and things like that. I really don't know where this discussion is going to go, so let's just see what happens. Anyways, first and foremost, I was wondering what all the hubbub was about fake news, and I think I know what people going nuts about that stuff are talking about, because people's standards for journalistic integrity are very much a moving target. Take, for example, this recent incident where somehow or another, well, according to some people, the AMD Ryzen, the release date has been leaked because it was on some kind of something or another from some AMD event that recently happened. AMD went over and corrected it afterwards. So there we go. AMD screwed up. We have the release date for Ryzen, right? At the end of February, beginning of March. Well, number one, that's not a release date. That's a release period. So it still doesn't tell you on this day, this processor will hit the streets and it will be for sale and you can buy it. This does not tell us anything that we haven't already been speculating about, which is why I've been staying out of the Zen speculation, because that's all this is going to do is just say, what if, right up until the processor launches, and then a bunch of people are going to look like idiots for taking guesses and ending up wrong, and in some cases, destroying their integrity because they're passing off their guesses as official announcements. So here's my wildcard reaction to this whole, look, AMD leaked the Ryzen's launch date. How do you know that this was not some kind of publicity stunt to generate more buzz? It's not like AMD hasn't been doing that enough as it is. How do you know? Oh, wait, you don't. Then that's the unfortunate truth. So you've just passed off your opinions as fact. And if something else happens, you will be embarrassed and your integrity will be completely out the door. Let's end this discussion right here, right now. If AMD didn't say it, it didn't happen. We don't know, and we are no closer to knowing when the Ryzen is going to hit the streets than we've ever been. Enough with the speculation already. It gets people views on YouTube, but there's going to be just as many people embarrassed after the Ryzen launches as there were people going on endlessly about, remember the Xbox 720 and all that other nonsense? Yeah, that's going to happen again because people don't learn their lesson. And as long as people keep taking this stuff seriously as though it actually were, news and updates and stuff, just because it shows up in Google News when you search for news about Ryzen does not mean it is actual news. This is why fake news is such a problem. Now, let me tell you something that we actually do know, that we actually can say for certain is an actual fact because it actually happened. AMD has just had the rug pulled out from under them. What's the point of buying any AMD stuff whatsoever unless the price plummets to fire sale desperation? Please get this crap off our hands price levels. What's the point of buying any AMD stuff now? With the Pentium that I was talking about yesterday, you have a sub $100 processor that takes the same socket as the i-Series Skylake and i-Series Kaby Lake, and you can update and upgrade the processor to a lot of different performance levels with the same motherboard. It's almost like a preemption of what AMD is going to do with the Zen architecture, that the various Zen chips are going to stick around for a couple of years. Haha, Intel's beating them to the punch, you know. But what about AMD's current lineup? What's the point? Okay, you can get AM3, AM3 Plus. Yeah, you get some decent performance out of that, but it better be cheap as heck, or else it's not worth it. I mean, why would you want to have a 125-watt processor that maybe matches a 54-watt processor? It just doesn't make any sense, especially when that 54-watt one can cost less still, and things like that. I expect price drops in desperation clearance prices and some really cheap computers for the old AMD stuff, if not when the Ryzen comes out sooner, because that's the only way AMD stuff is going to move right now. There's no point. You can get AM3, okay, that's going to be, you know, it's all going to AM4 when Zen comes out and Ryzen comes out. So you'll buy the AM3 thing and you've got a dead-end processor with outdated architecture, or something along those lines, or an outdated motherboard or something like that. Or you go FM2 for the APUs. That's becoming obsolete as well because the Ryzen is going to have APUs as well. So regardless of what socket of AMD you currently purchase, you are staring down the abyss at a dead end. So versus a sub $100 processor that gives you LGA 1151, the same socket as the Skylake lineup and the Kaby Lake lineup, and hey, maybe Intel will take a page from AMD and continue to support that socket for a couple of years to go booyah to AMD and enjoy a little extra sales now while AMD continues to not give us an actual release date. This we can know for certain. What we can also know for certain is that AMD is under a ton of pressure now. Intel didn't have to do very much to really pressure AMD to get the Ryzen released, or at least give a confirmed release date or something, because things have changed quite a bit just with this one chip release. Something else that we can say for certain, though, is that we're right back to where we started. Not much has really changed. The big problem that one would have with building computers and whatnot over the last couple of years is simple, plain old-fashioned uncertainty. When's the Zen coming out? How long did we ask that? When's the Zen coming out? Am I going to have to build an Intel system? You know, is it taking too long for Zen to come out? Is it taking too long for Zen to come out? And now, even still, even though folks are speculating that there could be a launch as early as March, which is about a month and a half away, we still don't know. We can't know for certain, and uncertainty is still the name of the game. This has been going on for years. Who else out there is annoyed to no end by all this uncertainty about whether or not there's going to be more competition with processors, computers, hardware, etc.? I know I've certainly had enough of this nonsense. And when people are over here, analysts and folks who are looking at the industry and looking at the sales trends, when people are scratching their heads and saying, how come PC sales are slumping? Why does it seem like the death of the PC is imminent? Well, look no further to nonsense like this if you want to see why. And in my own situation, I myself am not exempt from this. People are mad at me because I'm talking about getting away from tech videos and talking less about tech videos because I'm eventually going to run out of content because there's other things I'd like to make videos about. But here's the kicker with all of this. We have uncertainty all over the place when it comes to PC hardware. That keeps me from filling in the blanks with various missing details that I really wish that I could fill in. Seriously. Why wouldn't somebody who didn't want to have rehashed stuff over and over again back off from things with this sort of issue and whatnot? Now, I'm sure some of you are probably wondering why the picture for this discussion is a Silverstone Grandia HTPC case. jazzed up, of course, like most of the background images that I use on here. But here is why I'm doing what I'm doing with this picture. Now, up to this point, I've entertained the possibility of Monolith going to Ryzen from Skylake i7, but this Pentium thing threw a wrench into all of that. I've also talked about rehabbing Tuxedo and having that be a secondary system, but the big problem I'm having with any secondary systems at this point is how do I decide which one to use when? What gives me a reason to turn on every single one of those systems? The compelling concentrated coolness in general is a major issue right now. Okay, I bring back Tuxedo, it runs Windows 7 or something like that if I happen to lose the Windows 10 license because I had to swap out the motherboard. If I am stuck with Windows 7, when do I start that computer up and why do I start it up? If I put Linux on it, when do I start that computer up and why do I start it up? Silver Bullet, Fossil, Delosaurus, every other one, even the portables, why do I start them up? How do I not lose the batteries from being dead too long because they sat around too long without being used? Even that horrible netbook. Why should I turn any of those machines on ever? That's the question. So I'm actually rethinking some of this and some of this approach to come up with some reasons to turn things on more often, so to speak, with this Silverstone case that we're looking at right here. Now, one of the ideas that I've been tossing around is for some kind of secondary system that serves as a portable gaming machine of sorts. And I've joked about it being referred to as the J box or the J station. Now, of course, I almost forgot about the J station until I was reminded in the comments that I'd floated this idea earlier. But I have been tossing around the idea with what I have seen from how PC building has matured and how if you're not overclocking, you don't really need to go too crazy with some of the things people split hairs about in order to get a decent system. I'm actually wondering if I should make some kind of gaming-only machine as my answer to video game consoles and have that be my secondary system instead of Tuxedo. Tuxedo then would be relegated to Linux or something like that. Or, I could always put some drives. These cases have quite a bit of drive space in them for some of the older systems. I could always make Tuxedo into some kind of file server or something so I can actually have some network-attached storage of some sort. But I'm just trying to figure out what's going to go where. I'm thinking of leaving Tuxedo empty for now and going secondary system, trying to cook that Phenom 2 inside the Silverstone case to finish it off, which will mean, of course, needing to buy a new cooler for it to go low profile. But I am very, very legitimately curious about the possibility of having some kind of console type, not even a console replacement, but just a plain old-fashioned console, a computer that goes straight into the Steam big picture mode and things like that. And, of course, has access to games across multiple platforms and things along those lines. You plug controllers into the front, you plug your TV into the back, and basically, PlayStation what? That may pose some design and space challenges with how I would come up with a reason to switch that machine on. So that's why I can't really be certain of the details. Do I want to get one of those low-power Pentiums and see what I can squeeze out of it? Do I want to see if I can squeeze the 1090T in there and leave Tuxedo empty for the time being? What do I want to do? And of course, I'm still looking for a motherboard to revive that system with. Now I got to wonder if the prices are going to drop now that that Pentium has been announced, and there's very little reason to buy AMD anything right now. So again, uncertainty. I can't know. Many people out there can't know. Enthusiasts all over the place can't know. And thus we have an endless barrage of speculation where everyone is saying the exact same 6 or 7 things over and over again. It gets stale very quickly, and it's prone to being falsified by simply one simple official announcement from AMD. But even if AMD were to officially announce something for Ryzen and shut all these people up, people would be then just turn around and say, oh, hype train. Maybe I was onto something with the whole Duke Nukem Forever of processors thing last summer. I think the safest route for me to take would be to resuscitate Tuxedo or revive Tuxedo, so to speak, as a tower, and then look at a transfer over to one of these cases if I can squeeze enough gaming performance out of that thing to justify it, which shouldn't be too hard. stick the Kepler card in there. It has the power supply again that it ran the Kepler with and stuff like that. It's just efficiency is not going to be a thing with that processor. And that's really kind of something that bothers the heck out of me, because it's not just a matter of power consumption, which people jump on the spreadsheets and they're like, oh, it doesn't cost that much over the span of years to use a less efficient processor. No, but less efficient processors run hotter. They require more cooling. They require louder fans, things along those lines. So, I mean, one of the side effects of generating a watt of electricity is heat. What do you do with all that heat? Especially when you want to put stuff in a smaller form factor. Like, even though the Silverstone case takes 120 millimeter fans and full-size ATX boards, it's basically just enough of a case to squeeze an ATX in there sideways. Despite all of that stuff, I really have to consider my options here in terms of how to proceed. I mean, I'm already curious about deliberate low-power CPUs for the joke systems, or I could just junk the joke systems and stick with stuff that's modern, or just keep the cases around somewhere until I actually feel like putting something, putting some hardware in those things. But it does need to be low power, as we found out very, very recently, but it's just uncertainty, questions, can't know for certain, and people wonder why PC sales are slumping, and people wonder why folks like myself take breaks from tech videos, even though people complain about it. Of course, the demographics tells me the rest of the story that I should, and sooner rather than later, but we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. We have to answer the remaining questions about the computers and finish sorting through all the hardware that's sitting around in that area, deciding what's going with where and things along those lines, but the story won't end there. There's a lot more things that I want to look into that have nothing whatsoever to do with shuffling hardware in and out of computers. There just happens to be a lot of it right now because there's still a lot of it to do. But once again, the thing to do is wait. And that's something that I am completely and totally sick of doing. This is MultimediaJay signing off. Thanks for stopping by.